All right, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about the area of circles. So your goal for this is simply I can find the area of a circle. So a couple vocabulary words that we need to go over before we start to really look at circles. So the first one is pi, and you've probably heard of pi. It's a very popular math term. But this right here is the symbol for pi, and the way that we write it is pi. And pi is an irrational number, and this means that it goes on forever. Now, when you're using pi to calculate, you can't possibly put the actual number in the calculator because it goes on forever. So usually what we do in math is we will use 3.14, so the decimal 3.14 for pi, and that's what we're going to use. The second vocabulary word that's very important for circles is radius. And I have a picture of it down here. So when you have a circle, okay, the radius is any straight line from the center of the circle to the edge. So it's half of the width of the circle, okay, so from the center to the edge. And it can go out this way, it can go out this way, it can go out this way, this way, this way, it doesn't matter. And then the last vocabulary word for this lesson that's very important is diameter. So diameter is related to radius. And you can see I have a picture of it down here too. So the diameter is any straight line from one edge of the circle to the other, but it has to go through the center. So it's the complete width of the circle. Now the reason why it has to go through the center is because if I draw this line here, yes, that's a straight line. Yes, it goes from one edge to the other, but it is not the true width of the circle. This line right here is much longer, and so it has to go through the center of the circle. So the radius plus the radius will equal the diameter. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and take out your formula sheet and write down this information. You can hit pause if you need to, but I'm going to go ahead and go through the example here. So pi, as we just said, is going to stand for 3.14. The r, the radius of this circle, is 5 meters. And so we're going to go ahead and calculate the area with the formula that I gave you here. So A equals pi r squared. So A, actually, let me use this space down here so that I have more room. So A equals pi r squared. A equals parentheses 3.14, and then the radius is 5, so 5 squared. So order of operations is going to tell me to solve for this 5 squared first before I multiply. So 3.14 times 25, and then you can go ahead and put that in your calculator, which I'm going to do now. So 3.14 times 25, and that's going to give you 78.5 meters squared. And just the same as any other traditional area, you're going to square your final answer. So 78.5 meters squared, and that's a 7. Okay? All right, so let's look at our first example here. So again, pi is 3.14. The radius is 4 centimeters. Now I'm also asking you for the diameter just so we can practice that word. So the radius is 1/2 of it. Then the other half of it is also the radius, which is 4 centimeters. So 4 centimeters and 4 centimeters is 8 centimeters. Now we can go ahead and calculate the area. So area equals, oops, I have too many sticks in my pie. Area equals pi r squared. So area equals 3.14, and then our radius is 4 squared. Now again, we're always going to solve for our exponent first. Area equals 3.14 times 4 squared is 16, and then we just multiply those two together. So we have 3.14 times 16, which is going to give us 50.24 centimeters squared. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So again, pi is 3.14. Our radius here is 12 centimeters. So our diameter would be double the radius. so this is also 12 centimeters. So the diameter would be 24 centimeters. Now you notice that neither one of these are squared because they're not a calculation of area. Okay, so let's go ahead and calculate our area now. Area equals pi r squared, so area equals 3.14, and the radius was 12 squared. So area equals, we're going to solve for our exponent first, 3.14, and then 12 squared is 144. And then I'm going to multiply those two together, and I'm going to get 452 1600ths centimeters squared. All right, now here we have an example of a circle that's on the coordinate plane, which means that our units are going to be units, but it works just the same. So our pi is 3.14. Now calculate our radius. So this one actually gives us the center of the circle. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be 4 units. So the diameter, remember, is double the radius, and so that's going to be 8 units. And then we're going to go ahead and calculate our area like normal. So area equals pi r squared. Area equals 3.14. The radius is 4 squared. Area equals 3.14. 4 squared is 16. So our final area is 50.24 units squared. All right, so let's take a look at this one here. So pi, again, is 3.14. Now this time you'll notice that the circle is giving us the diameter. So it's going across through the center. So the diameter is 3 centimeters. Well, if the radius is half of the diameter, then the radius will be 1.5 centimeters. Okay, so if I split it here, this is 1.5 and this is 1.5. And 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. All right, so let's go ahead and calculate the area. So area equals pi r squared. Area equals 3.14. The radius is 1.5 squared. Area equals 3.14. And then you have to calculate 1.5 squared, which is going to be 2.25. And then you multiply those two together, and you're going to get 7.065 centimeters squared. Now, you're going to often get some, or not often, but you're going to occasionally get some numbers that are exceptionally long as your answer. I don't want you to round unless I explicitly say so, because I want to make sure that your calculations are precise as possible. Okay, now let's look at this example. So here we don't know what the radius is, but we are given the area. Okay, so we know that pi is 3.14, and apparently we know that the area is 153.86 inches squared. So we're going to use the same exact formula and we're going to work backwards. So area equals pi r squared. So the area is 153.86 equals, we know that pi is 3.14, and then we have r squared. We want to get the r by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 3.14. So when we take 153.86 divided by 3.14, I get 49 equals, these cancel, and I'm left with r squared. Now, r cannot be squared in my final answer, so the way that we unsquare r is we take the square root of it. Now, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So r equals, the square root of 49 is 7. So that's going to be radius equals 7 inches. Now, if the radius is 7 inches, then the diameter is going to be 14 inches. So double the radius. Okay, let's look at another example of that. So again, if we have pi is 3.14, this time our given area is 254.34 inches squared. So again, I'm going to start with the formula. A equals pi r squared. I know that the area is 254.34 equals, I know that pi is 3.14 and I do not know the radius and it's squared. I need the r by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides, because whatever you do to one side you have to do to the other, by 3.14. This cancels. You bring down your r squared. Now 254.34 divided by pi is going to give you 81. Now, the way that you unsquare r is you have to take the square root, but whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So that is going to leave you with r. And by the way, the reason why is because r times r is r squared, the same as the square root of 89 is 9, so 9 times 9 is 81. If I took the square root of 81, it gives me 9. If I took the square root of r squared, it just simply gives me r. Remember that the square root is asking you what times what gives me this number, but it has to be the same number. So here our radius is 9 inches and our diameter is 18 inches. All right, let's do one more example here. So pi is 3.14. Our area is 530.66 miles squared. So we always start with the formula. A equals pi r squared. I know that my area is 530.66. I know that pi is 3.14, and I know that I have r squared. I need to get the r by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3.14. This cancels, and I'm left with r squared. Then I have to do 530.66 divided by pi, and that leaves me with 169. Okay, now the way that I unsquare r is I take the square root of it, but whatever I do to one side I have to do to the other. So r equals 13. So my radius is 13 miles and my diameter, which is twice my radius, is 26 miles. All right, you go ahead and try this one. All right, so for this one, our diameter was 5, and that means that half of the diameter is the radius, so that would be 2.5 units, and since it didn't give us units, we're just going to call it units. When you put it into the formula, 2.5 squared is 6.25, and when you multiply that times pi, you get 19.625 units squared. All right, go ahead and try this one on your own. All right. So for this one, you were working backwards because you were given the area, but you were not given the radius or the diameter. So you have pi is 3.14, and you were given the area of 1,133.54. When you put it in the formula, you divide both sides by pi, and then you're left with 361 equals r squared. You take the square root of both, and you're given 19. Now, once you have the radius of 19, you can figure out the diameter by doing twice the radius, and so that would be 38 yards. All right, that is the end of this lesson, and we will do a lot more practice in class.